gas here.
We see Lockhart. He is an ambitious banker who is addicted to his phone and chews nicotine gum nonstop while conducting business. A flashback interrupts his travels, showing Lockhart moving into a new office where his superiors value him. He is full of hope when he is called upstairs. The CEO, Pembroke, who had gone to an alpine sanatorium, had submitted a weird letter to the board of directors announcing his resignation from the company. The issue is that an upcoming contract depends on his signature. In order to make up for his financial violations, Lockhart is dispatched on a business trip to locate and return the CEO to New York. If he fails to do so, he will go to prison. He pays his mother a visit in a nursing home before he departs. With the knowledge that he won't come back, she bids him farewell and offers him a handmade figurine of a ballerina. The driver tells Lockhart an old tale as they travel along a winding road past a settlement at the base of the mountain where the sanatorium is located. There once was a baron who had an obsession with blood purity and owned a castle. When he planned to marry his own sister, the peasants set fire to his estate. Arriving at the sanatorium, the young businessman sees elderly people in white clothes enjoying the fresh air. Lockhart asks the driver to wait and heads to the reception.
May I help you?
I'm here to see a guest.
I'm sorry, but visiting hours are over for the day.
He then asks,
Is there a manager I can speak to?
I'll see what I can do.
He then tries to call the office, but there is no signal. He wanders around the green lawn and notices a ventilation window in the basement wall of an old chapel. Speaking with the administrator, he sees an old photo of the sanatorium on the site of the burned-down castle. There was a man covered in bandages in that photo. The doctor takes some mysterious water along with vitamins from a blue bottle. The administrator suggests he return in the evening at 7 when the treatments are finished. He drinks the glass of water and leaves. Lockhart has no choice but to head back to the car. As he was going in the car back to a hotel to stay for till evening, he noticed a girl in a blue dress on the fortress wall. On the way, Lockhart loses consciousness and wakes up in a sanatorium ward, greeted by a cast on his leg and Dr. Heinrich Folmgren. The doctor informs him that his superiors have been notified of the unforeseen circumstances and that Lockhart will need to stay at the sanatorium for a few days. The doctor emphasizes the importance of drinking plenty of water to respond properly. After the conversation, Lockhart stands by the window and watches as the ventilation window in the chapel's foundation is sealed. He drinks a glass of water and notices a tiny speck on the glass, which turns out to be a small bug. He then wanders through the building, observing his surroundings. He observed that the patients engage in various water therapies under the supervision of the staff. Soon, he is invited to take steam baths. In the steam-filled sauna, Lockhart gets disoriented and realizes that the passage behind him has disappeared. He finds himself in an enclosed room with no exit. After a few moments, he sees a corridor where a deer briefly appears. Following it, he discovers Pembroke, the purpose of his visit. The old man refuses to return to the city for business. He believes he is sick. He then recalls Lockhart's father, mentioning they started together, but they destroyed his father and shouldn't have done that. Lockhart replies to him saying, "Most people don't have what it takes to survive." Pembroke then submerged into water and came out after a few seconds. Suddenly, Pembroke agrees to return to the city for a few days. Lockhart asks for a taxi at the reception and waits outside. There he is approached by Mrs. Watkins, an enthusiast of riddles who studies the history and stories of the place. She shows Lockhart the remains of the church where the Baron reportedly executed a priest. It is believed that people used to travel from miles away to witness the miracles attributed to the holy water. Lockhart then explains the Baron's obsession with bloodline purity, and she promises to investigate further. Lockhart sees the girl in the blue dress again, named Hannah, who is a special patient. The fact that she is the only patient permitted to take the vitamins from a blue bottle, the same vitamins that Volmer and the other staff members take, makes her feel unique. When Lockhart mentions he is leaving soon, she is surprised and questions why he would want to leave such beautiful surroundings. This makes him reconsider his departure. Returning inside, Lockhart cannot find Pembroke in the dining hall, where patients and Dr. Volmer are present. The doctor informs him that Pembroke felt unwell after their conversation and was sent for special treatment. Lockhart becomes agitated and starts shouting, but suddenly he gets a nosebleed and faints. Dr. Volmer examines him in his office and tells him that at such a young age, he already requires special care. Lockhart reluctantly agrees to the doctor's suggestion. As soon as Volmer leaves, Lockhart searches Pembroke's medical records. While providing a urine sample, Lockhart notices something unusual in one of the vials, something that looks like a parasite. Lockhart is then placed in a sensory deprivation tank and warned that the absence of stimuli can lead to hallucinations. Floating in the tank, he recalls his childhood, but suddenly notices numerous eels. He tries to alert the attendant, but the nurse is distracted. Struggling to surface, Lockhart loses his oxygen tube and begins to suffocate, unable to open the lid. As his pulse drops, he has a vision of his father's death. His father stopped the car on a bridge, got out, and jumped over the railing. The attendant revives Lockhart, but when they inspect the tank, there are no eels inside. Back in his room, Lockhart reviews Pembroke's dental records and notices peculiarities with his teeth. He is then distracted by a strange noise. Lockhart notices the toilet handle moving on its own. Approaching it, he sees through a window a worker wheeling a cart with a body toward the chapel. The next morning, he talks with Mrs. Watkins, who tells him that the villagers burned the castle not because of the illicit affair between the Baron and his sister, but because of the Baron's medical experiments. The Baron kidnapped people for his experiments, and their dried corpses were found in the fields. Lockhart suspects the Baron was searching for a cure for his wife. Seeing Hannah, he asks her to take him to the village on her bicycle, offering the ballerina figurine his mother gave him in return. Together, they descend the mountain to the village. Lockhart takes her to a nearby pub. She reveals that her mother died in a fire when she was young, and that her father will come for her once she is cured. She also lets him borrow some of her vitamins. Lockhart also saw the car driver there, who revealed that the wellness spa gave him a new car, but he doesn't know the reason behind it till now. Lockhart leaves Hannah at a pub and visits the veterinarian across the street to inquire about Pembroke. The vet reveals interesting findings. Despite the ample water at the sanatorium, tooth loss is due to dehydration. The vet adds that the Baron's wife, who was also his sister, was infertile, and each attempt at pregnancy resulted in a miscarriage of a deformed fetus. At the end of their conversation, the vet dissects a cow that had drunk water from the mountain spring. Its intestines were full of live eels, and a stillborn calf came out. At the pub, Lockhart calls his office and learns that Dr. Volmer never reported the accident. He wants to talk to Hannah about the sanatorium, but a local thug takes an interest in her, leading to a fight. The altercation is interrupted by Dr. Volmer, who takes them back to the sanatorium. In Hannah's room, she feels abdominal pain, but the doctor promises to cure her. That night, Lockhart dreams of a naked Hannah in a bathtub full of live eels. He wakes up from the nightmare and sees a worker wheeling an empty gurney from the basement. In the mirror, he notices a loose tooth that he easily pulls out. Lockhart goes to the reception to report this. When the nurse leaves to get him some medicine, he sees Pembroke's current location in the transfusion wing. He heads there, trying to avoid detection. By the elevator, he sees a gurney with a body, and the old man on it suddenly opens his eyes and screams. This distracts the orderlies, allowing Lockhart to sneak into the elevator and descend. He finds several rooms with barrow chambers, and in another room, he finds Mrs. Watkins. He tells her that the Baron's experiments are happening again, and in return, she reveals that the Baron's wife wasn't infertile because she was pregnant on the night of the wedding. Before she was burned alive, the mob cut the fetus from her womb and threw it into the lake, where it survived. Horrified, Lockhart sees parasites under her skin and backs away, knocking over a metal cabinet. The noise attracts the orderlies, and he hides behind one of the many doors. Lockhart discovers tanks of water with people inside, including CEO Pembroke. Enraged, he tries to break the glass but fails. He runs upstairs but is caught by the orderlies and Dr. Volmer, who take him to a dental room to check his tooth. They clamp him down and drill out his front tooth. Somehow, Lockhart escapes from the chair, climbs into a car bringing in another patient, and begs the driver to take him to the police. At the police station, Lockhart reports the illegal experiments, but when the officer steps out, he sees the signature blue bottle of medicine in a cabinet. The policeman returns to the office with Dr. Volmer, who claims Lockhart is a patient suffering from hallucinations and aggressive behavior. Pembroke appears next, confirming that Lockhart threatened him. The fact that Pembroke is alive shakes Lockhart's confidence in his own sanity, and he reluctantly returns to the sanatorium. The next morning, Lockhart sits in his room, staring at Mrs. Watkins's notes. His attention is drawn to the sound of the toilet handle moving again. When he lifts the lid, he sees eels inside the tank, but they vanish after a second, seemingly flushed away. Determined to find out more, Lockhart breaks the toilet, but the eels do not reappear. He writes a letter to the board of directors, similar to the one Pembroke had written earlier. Lockhart undergoes a series of treatments, but at one point, he smashes a glass of water and uses a shard to cut off the cast on his leg, revealing that it was never broken as the doctor claimed. It was all a ruse. He breaks into the basement with a shovel, discovering underground lakes and an ancient laboratory filled with preserved eels, numerous records, deformed human fetuses, and human skin masks. He finds an altar with a portrait of the Baron's wife, who looks strikingly similar to an older Hannah. Descending further, Lockhart discovers a gurney with Mrs. Watkins's body under a sheet. Hearing someone approaching, he hides and witnesses a worker dumping the body into a lake, where eels devour it. Lockhart fights the worker, hitting him with a brick and escaping. A frightened Hannah, unaware of the events, goes to the dining hall to see Dr. Volmer. Noticing blood on her dress, the doctor expresses delight. Lockhart bursts in, demanding they let Hannah go. He addresses the patients, revealing they are being deceived and poisoned by the water. Instead of protesting, the elderly patients seize Lockhart and take him to the transfusion wing, where they place him in a barrow chamber. Dr. Volmer explains that the water in the lake allows the eels to live much longer than usual, but it is toxic to humans unless filtered through human bodies, which produces the mysterious blue elixir that prolongs life. But to do this process, the water was purified through live humans. Volmer inserts a tube down Lockhart's throat, allowing the frightening eels to enter his stomach. They then remove the vitamins from his digestive system, which supposedly renders him everlasting. After having his teeth fixed, Lockhart, like the other patients, appears to have altered and is still suffering from an illusion of illness. Later, Dr. Volmer tells Hannah that she has transitioned from a girl to a woman. She goes to Lockhart, who is sitting on a bench outside, and returns the ballerina figurine, telling him that he can leave. Hannah sadly tells Lockhart that she cannot leave because the doctor will never let her go. Suddenly, Lockhart begins to question why he would want to leave such a beautiful place. That evening, the sanatorium staff and villagers held a wedding ceremony for Dr. Volmer and Hannah. Dr. Volmer leads Hannah to the underground lake where the laboratory, altar, and bed are located, intending for them to conceive a child. Hannah resists, but Dr. Volmer ties her up. In defiance, she strikes him, causing the skin on his forehead to split. Holding the ballerina figurine, Lockhart snaps out of his delusion and recalls Mrs. Watkins' words. He smashes a glass frame in the administrator's office, revealing an old photograph from the sanatorium's construction era. In the picture, a bandaged man holds the hand of a little girl in a light dress. Realizing that Dr. Volmer is the Baron and Hannah is his daughter, Lockhart rushes to the underground lab. He pours gasoline around the area. The Baron tries to stop him, even removing his leather mask to reveal his scarred, green, burnt face, but Lockhart sets the place on fire. Sparks ignite the ventilation system, setting the curtains ablaze in the hall where the staff is celebrating the wedding. A fight ensues, and the Baron nearly feeds Lockhart to the eels. Hannah appears and powerfully strikes her father in the face with a shovel, saving Lockhart. They escape the burning underground lab and watch the fire consume the sanatorium while the patients continue dancing, oblivious to the chaos. Lockhart and Hannah ride away on a bicycle. At a turn, they crash into a car carrying members of the board of directors. Ignoring their commands, Lockhart gets back on the bicycle and rides away with the 200-year-old Hannah smiling maniacally. This is Buff Recap. Stay safe and thanks for watching.